chapter 29. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Sundays. If you didn't know this, our lead pastor Mike Yunker has been on sabbatical. If my count is right, very well might not be, but if it's right, he's going to be teaching the first week of January. So that's 6 Sundays from now. So I'm excited for that. But it's flown by. This fall has absolutely flown by, and we've made it the majority of the way through the book of Genesis. We basically were embarking on this really long journey to going through the entire Bible, and we started with the life of Jesus and spent about a year and a half in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but we're pretty much going to go chronologically through in the next few years. So we are weighted heavily, thickly into the mess of God's family. So that He has started. So if you have a Bible, or if not, there's one underneath your seat. Open up to Genesis chapter 29. And this is a story about Jacob, Rachel, Leah, and Laban, and all of Jacob's kids. So last week, does anybody remember what happened last week if you were here? If not, you're off the hook. What happened last week?
You had to preach.
Yeah. Yes, I had to. And you had to listen. Anybody remember the story? What's that?
Jacob gave his blessings.
Isaac gave his blessing to Jacob's involved in the story a little bit. Yes, Jacob stole Isaac's blessing. So we've got God beginning His redemptive plan. He's making all these grandiose promises, like he starts with this guy named Abraham. And Abraham, he says, your family is going to bless the whole world, and your descendants are going to be more numerous than the stars in the sky. And he reiterates this promise. Into now the third generation. So Abraham had Isaac. Isaac had Jacob and Esau. And then the story last week was of how Jacob took basically the torch from Isaac. He took the blessing, the patriarchal blessing from his father, who was going to give it to his brother, and he took it instead. And so he disguised himself, made his dad think that he was his older brother, and so his dad thought he was giving to his older brother. He signed on the dotted line, handing everything over to Jacob. And then the way the story ended was his mom's thinking of a way to cover this up, and how does he get out of here with his father's blessing so that his brother doesn't go and kill him, and it's this big soap opera. And so Jacob leaves under the guise that he's going to go find a wife, which he would have needed to do, but it wasn't the primary reason that he's leaving. So he's leaving home. He's told to go visit his mom's brother, so he's going to go live with his uncle to escape and to potentially find a wife that's not from another nation. Okay? So he begins his journey, and this is about a 600-mile trek from where we believe these places to be Paddan Aram to Haran, which is where his uncle Laban lived. Okay, so he makes and he does this by himself. So this would have taken him months. Okay, so then I'm gonna kind of give the gist of Genesis chapter 29 and. At least for the most part, and at least the first part of it, and then we'll read certain parts of it, but then I'm going to summarize other parts of it. So one day after I don't know, a couple months of him traveling, he sees some sheep. Like he's escaping his family. They're long gone. He's way out. He sees some sheep, and he realizes if there's sheep here in this field, then there's got to be people somewhere nearby. And so he starts searching, and it doesn't take him long. He finds these shepherds, and he goes up to these shepherds and he says, "Where are you from?" And they say Haran. And he's like, "Sweet, that's exactly the place that I have been looking for." You gotta enter in this guy's world for a second. He doesn't know where he's going. I mean, he might have, but he might have an idea of what direction, but he's never been to this place. He doesn't have anyone to guide him, and so he's just kind of like probably bouncing around, taking clues from people along the way. And he's totally like, he doesn't even know when he left. His dad ended up living, spoiler alert, about 80 more years, even though they thought he was about to die. They thought he might be on his deathbed, so let's get this will thing taken care of. But he leaves with that belief and this whole journey, he's got to be thinking, I might never see my dad again. I might never be able to return home because my brother wants to take vengeance on me. I might never see my mom again. He's totally estranged. Like, he has nowhere that he belongs. I don't know if you ever felt like that. Like maybe you moved to a new place and you had a home, you had an address, but you just didn't feel like you belonged. Or you just, I mean, I can't tell you in youth ministry how many kids I work with that, like, you start asking them elementary questions about their life. Where are you from? And the question, where are you from, has a really long answer. Well, I've moved from here to here to here to here. I haven't lived in a place more than 18 months at a time out of my life. And so I don't know if you've ever been there where you don't have a place to land. You don't have a place, a safe place. There's nowhere that you can really be comfortable and secure. That's where he's at. Which explains what happens next when he says, okay, you're from Haran. Do you know Laban? There's this guy named Laban I'm looking for. Do you know him? And they say, yeah, actually, right over here, his daughter is coming with some sheep. She's a shepherdess. Her name's Rachel. And he's like, are you serious? And he sees her and like hearts like pop out of his eyeballs, and he's just like, and you know, kind of like in Looney Tunes, like the heart just pumps out of the chest, and just like he sees her immediately, and he just goes bonkers. Well, he comes up, and if we read this if you read the beginning of Genesis 29, it says he runs up to her and he kisses her, and then he weeps loudly. Like, so in our 21st century mind, we think he like gives her a big smooch, just total stranger, like, oh, come on, your sister, and then he like falls to his knees. Like, who does that? This is so weird. This guy is losing it. He spent too many nights alone. Okay, and so he. But really, this would have been a greeting. He probably gives her a kiss on the cheek, you know, like they do in Europe and stuff. And but really, even deeper than the romantic element that very quickly enters into it between the two of these two characters, as soon as he realizes that she's Laban's daughter, he sees someone that is his family. And now, it might seem kind of weird, his cousin, he likes his cousin. Yeah, well, that's the family God chose. I don't know what to tell you, but that's a story. So we're sticking to it. But if you could put that, if you can, I had a hard time doing it, but if you could put that aside, the fact that there's romance in family, he sees someone who he, even remotely, even though he's never met her, he knows that he belongs with her. Somehow, like there's this link between the two of them. She's not just an estranged total stranger, and so I think that's why he just breaks down. Like, he's been wandering all these months, and now he finally finds a place where he can be comfortable, where he can be known. And so then she's like, "This is odd. I got to tell my dad." So she runs home. And she makes her way home. So he goes and he I don't know, maybe he like falls behind her, and they meet and they embrace, and it's great. Laban's like, hey, you're my own flesh and blood. This is awesome. And then he lives with them. He stays with Laban, and it says about a month after he had been living there, he's working also to, you know, pay for his keep, and Laban says, you know what? You know, this isn't really fair. Just because you're my relative doesn't mean you should work for me for free. I mean, this is great and all, but I want to help you out too. So what can I do? What can I do to help you? And he's like, well, since you asked, I guess. I mean, your daughter Rachel's pretty. She's pretty sweet. I would take her if you're asking what the price is. So they make this agreement that he will work for 7 years for Laban so that he can marry Rachel, his younger daughter. He's got 2 daughters, Rachel and Leah. And now if that were me, I mean, I think that's a pretty good prescription for someone that wants to marry your daughter. Like, okay, you put 7 years into it, and then we'll talk. Okay, like enough of this. You know, like oh, we're together, this is great, and married right away. No. I like this. I like this formula. This is, as a dad, this is like, you gotta, well, we're getting there. Okay. Yeah, so he gives him 7 years of hard labor. And then it says, but to Jacob, I don't know exactly the verse, but it says, but to Jacob it seemed only like a few days because of his love for her. Oh, snap! Okay, this guy is head over heels. Like, this is the Princess Bride times 50, okay? Like, he I don't know if you've seen that movie, but the girl, he starts out as a servant boy, and she's like ordering him around, and he just does whatever she says, no matter what. Like, she gives him the dirtiest jobs, and he's like, as you wish. Yeah, he says, as you wish. And eventually she realizes how like, much of a man he is, and so but here's an interesting thing. Like I said last week, one of the ways that we can interpret the scriptures, especially narrative books like this, like the book of Genesis, is to look at little comments and interpretations and insights that the author makes. Things that aren't just, this is what happened, this he said, she said, they did, but he says this in verse 16 of chapter 29. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had, as the NIV says, weak eyes, but Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your daughter Rachel. Okay, so Leah had weak eyes. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that she was weak, like, that doesn't really mean anything to us, but another way to translate it would be that she had soft, like, her complexion was kind of softer, simple, maybe, that she didn't really stand out, necessarily. It's not that she was, it's not that we have, like, this kind of Cinderella thing where it's like she's ugly and dejected, and she's beautiful and great, but there is a contrast. Leah was kind of average. But Rachel, it says, by contrast, she was beautiful. She was lovely in form. Okay? So Jacob's like, I like that one. And then this is what happens. So 7 years go by, and Jacob's like, he says, I love this comment. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, my time is completed, and I want to lie with her. He's like, okay, it's been 7 years. Like where in the world today does that happen? Like, where a man waits 7 years. Like, I can't even, I don't even know. Like, I'm at least going to have any guy that wants to, any boy that wants to entertain my daughter's company, he's going to have an application form, and he's going to go on numerous dates with me before he even comes near her. And we're going to have one rule: don't do anything with her that you wouldn't do with me. Okay? That's the guideline, okay? So, would you hold my hand? Probably not. Okay? So I'm thinking, this is, but this guy, this is some endurance. I mean, there's not a lot to look up to in Jacob necessarily, but this is something where I'm assuming there's nothing to indicate that he was unfaithful during this time. So he seems to have quite the desire. That means that he hadn't, they hadn't consummated their relationship yet. So then this is what happens. Then there's the feast. Laban's like, all right, you're right. Let's have a wedding feast. So they have a wedding feast. Okay, and then there's probably alcohol there. There's probably spirits, and they're having a good time. And then the way that a marriage became official in those days for this culture was that the husband and wife would have sex, and if they had sex, that meant this is for real. So they would go in. They went into their tent. Now the woman would have been veiled the whole time during the feast. She wouldn't have been, her face wouldn't have been seen. And that's part of like kind of the way we have in our culture, where sometimes the husband and wife or the fiancés, they don't see each other 24 hours before the wedding. It's kind of like that, I imagine. Okay, so she doesn't, she doesn't see him. He doesn't, or she sees him, but he doesn't see her. She's special. Let me move this around a little bit. But there's a trick. When Jacob wakes up the next morning, he's like, hey Rachel, and she's like, who are you talking about? Rachel. Laban, apparently Jacob must have had a little too much fun during his wedding feast, and Laban, or it was really dark, and Laban did a little switcheroo, where it wasn't Rachel that Jacob married and laid with, it was Leah, his older daughter. So Laban gives Jacob, if you remember from last week, a little bit of his own medicine. I'm going to disguise, Jacob disguised himself before Isaac in a similar way to Leah being disguised as Rachel. Okay, and so, but here's the deal: you can't. This is another thing where no takesies backsies. There's no casual relationships in this culture. So they are married. Like this is a done deal. And he's like, what? Dude, I worked 7 years from you and this is what you give me? And the funny thing is Laban doesn't even realize that probably what Jacob did to his dad. So this is just more soap opera-y the more you get into it. And here's another weird thing. Jacob's mom, in last week's story where Jacob steals the blessing, his mom, Rebecca, was the one that put him up to it. Well, in this story, her brother Laban is the mastermind behind this. Okay, so there's something going on in this family where these people are tricksters. They know their deal. So then he's like, all right, if you work for me another 7 years, I'll give you my other daughter. Okay? He's like, it's not our custom to marry the younger daughter first. And so it's like, that would have been nice to know from the beginning. But, so he says basically, if you work for another 7 years, you'll get, I'll give you Rachel right now, but you got to commit to another 7 years. So he finishes the week with Leah, and then he gets another honeymoon with another wife right after that, Rachel. So he gets 2 wives out of 7 years, but then he's got to work another 7 years. Okay, but then we've got the next part of the story, and starting in verse 31 is the chronicle of all of Jacob's kids. Okay, and this is where the story I think gets intense, and where it's not that simple, because I heard a friend told me, Polygamy for Dummies will tell you, if you want to have a successful polygamous relationship, don't marry 2 sisters. If they're sisters beforehand, they're probably it's going to be even worse when they're sister wives. So Jacob learns this lesson pretty quick, that like these girls, they don't like each other. It might have been better to get two ladies that don't know each other if you're going to do that. But what they do is it becomes kind of this competition. Okay, because who can have the most kids? Okay, so I need a couple volunteers. Okay, you're not gonna have to do anything weird. You're not gonna say anything or anything. All you're gonna have to do is hold up your finger every time one of these women has a kid. Okay. Okay, we got one right here. Okay, right on. Faith is gonna come up. I need one more volunteer. One more, because there's 2 parties in this. So yeah, Paul. Okay, come on up. Give me a hand. Okay. Okay, so you come stand over here. Okay. I'm standing over here. Face. Rachel. Oh, Rachel. You want her to be Rachel? Take it as a compliment. Okay. So. She's not gonna have much to do. Yeah, that's true. You're not. If you're Rachel, you might actually lose. So you're gonna be Rachel. Okay. You're gonna represent Rachel. You're gonna be the scoreboard. You guys are the scoreboard. You're gonna be Leah. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna read this, and anytime that Leah or Rachel has a kid, or it gets trickier, or a child is attributed to them, Then it'll make sense in a minute. Then you put your finger up. Okay, so just keep counting up. Okay, so when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. Okay. Leah 1, Rachel 0. Sorry, Rachel. She named him Reuben, for she said, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too." Leah 2, Rachel 0. So she named him Simeon. Again she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." So she named him Levi. So that's Leah 3, Rachel 0. Okay, she conceived again, and she gave birth to a son. She said, "This time I will praise the Lord." So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. Okay, so Leah 4, Rachel 0. What's going on?
I can't have children.
Okay, all right. Well, you got some explaining to do. It's not that easy. You can't just make that excuse all the time. So when Rachel saw, this is what you're trying to tell me, I guess. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I will die." Jacob became angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?" Gentlemen, do you not hear the refrain? Like, she expects you to know exactly what's wrong, even when apparently nothing's wrong, but you're supposed to know if something's wrong. So anyway, that's another topic. Jacob became angry with her and said, okay, we already read that, "Am I in the place of God?" Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my maidservant." Okay, so a detail that I left out is when each of these, and this was a common custom, when each of these women got married, they would have a maidservant that kind of attended to them throughout their marriage, really. As women of status received that. Okay, so Leah received Zilpah, and Rachel received Bilhah. Okay, so so then it gets trickier. She says, "All right, then here's the deal." Rachel gets creative. Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my maidservant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and that through her I too can build a family." So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan. So Rachel 1, Leah 4. What now? Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won." Apparently you don't know the score, because it's 4-2, so I don't know what to tell you. So she named him Naphtali. Now, here's a detail that you might be caught up on that I want to clear. So, I don't know how to explain exactly, but in this culture, what they're doing, what she does with Bilhah, would have been kind of like we do with surrogacy today, where today it's all scientific and you implant an egg, and so a woman who can carry a baby that's not even really hers. Okay, if a woman's barren. Okay, and this is the way they did that in this culture. So this and there's actually archaeological findings in the ancient Near East of contracts that were made up that represent this kind of transaction, where it's like, okay, she is going to do this for me so that I can have this kid. So when Bill had this kid, it became Rachel's. Rachel adopted this kid. I don't know how soon after birth, but it was her. It was technically her child. Okay, so that's why they're saying this. She attributes to God that God has done it for her. We'll talk about that later. When Leah, okay, now we're going back. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her maidservant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Boom, 5-2. Then Leah said, "What good fortune." So she named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, you got to think Jacob's going to probably start hiding after a while. Like I just am going to stay out in the field all day. I don't want to mess with you guys anymore. Where am I? She bore him a second son. So what are we at? 6-2? Man, I thought you were the favorite. Yeah, V for victory. Good. That's a good comeback. Okay. And he said, "How happy I am! The women will call me happy. I am happy. I will be happy no matter what." I kind of feel that coming through. So she named him Asher. There's a kid that's gonna. Jeff and Alyssa's son Asher is named Asher. during wheat harvest. Okay, so now score 6-2. Okay, so now Leah is not done though. She's gonna rub this in Rachel's face. During wheat harvest, Reuben, this is Leah's oldest son, went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Okay, now what's a mandrake plant? Anybody got any insight on this? It's thought, yeah? What? Yes. This is thought to be basically the way that Reuben's using it, the way that Lee's using it, and it's still thought of as today. Even there's no medical scientific proof that this is basically would make you fertile. Okay, so that's at least it seems why. So she's like, I'm gonna up the ante even more. And then Rachel said to Leah, she sees this, she goes, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes," because she's like, I want to get on this. But she said to her, "Wasn't it enough that this is Leah talking? Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too?" Oh snap! "Very well," Rachel said. "He can sleep with you tonight," talking about Jacob, "in return for your son's mandrakes." So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, this is messed up, Leah went out to meet him. "You must sleep with me," she said. "I have hired you with your son's mandrakes." So he slept with her that night. Like, come here. like, get in the bedroom. I mean, man, I do not want to be this guy. Like, he's just... anyway, I'm just going to keep going. God listened to Leah. So score 6-2 right now. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore him a 5th son. So she herself did 5, but she's at 7. Then Leah said, "God has rewarded me for giving my maidservant to my husband." So she named him Issachar. Then Leah said, "God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him 6 sons." So she conceived again. I missed the line. She conceived again, so she's at 8 altogether. And she said, he is because I bore him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. So that doesn't count, okay? Sorry, ladies. Apparently, I don't know. That's the way it is, I guess. I didn't make up the rules. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and he opened her womb. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, "God has taken away my disgrace." 3, yes! You're at 3. Just give Rachel a round of applause. Yeah. W for win. Okay, yeah, keep thinking that. She named him Joseph and said, "May the Lord add to me another son." So she's like, I'm just getting going. Okay, but that's her first actual son. So that's it for now. Rachel ends up having one more kid eventually, which we're going to get to that story. His name's Benjamin. So that doesn't count though yet. Sorry, you're only at 3. Sorry. So what's the final score? Leah 8, Rachel 3. So it looks like we have an undisputed champion. Give Leah a round, everybody. Okay, you can have a seat. Thank you. You can have a seat. Thank you. You guys rocked. You guys rocked that. Leah wins, man. She wins. So here's why I do that. These sisters don't seem to be able to escape this contest. They keep trying to one-up each other, even though Leah's like up here. But it doesn't matter, because here's the thing. Leah and Rachel really wanted different things. And Leah had what Rachel wanted. She could have kids. This whole time. I mean, think about it. Rachel didn't have a kid herself until probably 15, 20 years after Leah had her first kid. So Leah's like, she's fertile, man, fertile soil. But then Leah, what she wants is the very thing that Rachel has. Rachel has Jacob's affection. And so you read over and over again, it says, I don't know if I've got it on here. It says, Leah after her first son, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. I've had a kid for him. Now that's got to be good enough." Okay? And then she says, after she has her third one, in verse 34, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me because I've borne him 3 sons." Isn't that good enough? 3 kids. She hasn't had any for you. I've had 3. Don't you see any worth in me? Okay. And then she says later, this time after she has her last son, 6 sons, she says, "Surely this is good enough. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him 6 sons." That's after she does the, "Come here. Let's do this. This is happening right now." That's right after that. She has this insatiable desire to please him. Neither woman has what they want. Rachel has what Leah wants. Leah has what Rachel wants, but neither of them are satisfied. Rachel's jealous that Leah has kids, and so she wants to have that experience. She probably sees them running around and her embracing them, and she just wonders what she's missing out on. And so it begs the question, have you ever wondered if everything good is happening somewhere else? Like, no matter where you're at, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be to your satisfaction. It's only going to be filled with strife. It's only going to be filled with chaos and discord and mistrust and dysfunction. Do you ever wonder that? Maybe it seems like everyone else has this life that I'm missing out on. All these other people have this amazing stuff. You know, that's a tension that I definitely feel, and that my wife feels, you know, in the digital age. One of the ways that we share our lives now is definitely through Facebook, especially with families. People are posting pictures of their kids, and it's always like in this adventurous, like, wow, my life's awesome, yes. And then it's like, whoa, I've never done anything that cool. And so you very quickly, you know, you scroll down your Facebook feed, which basically other people posting stuff, and you get to see the highlights of everyone else's life while you're sitting there staring at a screen. And then you wonder, is this what my life's going to be, observing everyone else make it? Okay, so this is what happens is, they think the way out of that is to compete, basically, to prove yourself. If I can just prove myself, if I can just have enough kids for him to like me, or if I can just have one kid to prove that I'm woman enough, that I'm actually a woman, is that what it takes? Which raises the question, what does it actually take? What does it take? What do I have to get to in order for it to be enough? What is enough? Where's the top? And it raises this larger question about, I want to set this up as a competition, because competition in general, what is competition? The main way I see this is through sports, because this is something I've grown up in, and I have a lot of emotional energy invested in sports. But ultimately, when I find myself crying on my pillow after Super Bowl 32, when John Elway wins, he dives into the end zone, which is something he normally doesn't do, to beat the Packers by 7 points, and I'm like sitting there alone in my living room, just soaking my pillow with my tears. You know, I look back and then I think, why is it that, you know, there's a way in which I've attached myself to them. And so I kind of came with this definition of competition. And maybe it doesn't incorporate the whole thing, but the means by which superiority is proven. Because if you're going to say, man, I am the best basketball player on the planet. My team, these guys, we're the best. What if somebody else says that? Well, a tournament, a game, a competition is the way that you actually see who is better. So it's a way for, and then the trophy is proof. Like, hey, this shows you that I beat that person. That means that I'm better than them. So this means that I'm the best, and there's no questions about it. I've proved myself. I have elevated myself. I've made myself. I've shown that I can beat anybody. Okay, that's ultimately what it does. Now, it's easy to put that in a negative light, but there's a lot worse ways to compete, like war. So at sports competitions, as much as I like to vilify them and then like them at the same time and be hypocritical about that, there's a lot worse things in the world. Like I'll go to a middle school volleyball game or something, and I'll think, or you just go to like a professional sports team game and think about how basic, like, what do these numbers even mean? It doesn't mean anything. But then I'm like, you know what? We could be like, there could be like guns here and violence, and I'm like, if this is how we compete, it's a pretty good place to be. So I don't want to come across as like that, but there is a sense in which we have this deep, insatiable desire to prove ourselves, to establish our legitimacy. I'm legitimate. You should take me seriously. And so one of the things that I was thinking about in this is, if you look back at Genesis 28, it's actually a chapter that we skip in this series, but I want to look back on it. Jacob, on his way, this is his travel to Haran. He's coming to the place we're at, and early on, probably about 60 or so miles in, he falls asleep and he has this dream. And it says, when he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night. This is verse 11 of chapter 28. He stopped for the night before the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. That sounds comfortable. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Okay, stop. Don't read any further. Okay, you're not allowed to. Okay, I'll get to it. Just stay with me. So there's this stairway. Jacob he has this dream. There's this staircase. I mean, imagine whatever you want, whether it's winding, whether it's like one of those really bizarre ones, zigzags, or whether it's just straight and there's angels coming up and down there. And then God is all the way at the top. And Jacob sees God there. Now, I want to hijack this dream. And I don't know if this is actually what God meant it for, but I think if I had that dream, I would be wondering, okay, this is awesome. How do I get up there? How do I get to that spot? I want to be there. I want to be wherever that is. That's where I want to be, because that looks pretty sweet. Down here, not so much, but I want to get up there. And so I think that's my refrain, because that is so much of what my life has been, is me seeing especially through the lens of Scripture, me seeing God up there and me down here without Him, and then taking it on as my task to climb up this staircase. To get to Him, I'm seeking Him. I'm following Him. I'm reaching out for God. I'm climbing the staircase. I'm climbing this ladder. I'm making my way up. And very quickly though, when you do that, when I've done that, other people wanting to do the same thing somehow seems sometimes like a threat. Like, no, I'm at this stair. I'm at this point in the ladder. Where are you at? What part of the staircase are you on? Oh, well, I was there. I was there a while ago. I'm above that now. But honestly, for me, it started when I got to Bible college. In high school, if you were my parent, you would not have been proud of me. My grades were, I was a good kid for the most part. You know, I wasn't in drugs or anything, and so I was, that's to my merit, I guess. But I was not good at school. And today, like, if you're a parent, like, you can look at your kids' grades at any time. Like, you can see every assignment. You look on your computer, it's all there instantly. For me, you had to wait till the quarter. So I could float for 8 weeks saying, oh yeah, I don't have any homework. I don't know why. It's just weird. The teacher, or I got it done at school today, whatever, you know. So I did horrible. But Bible college came, and I started getting A's. And I kept getting more A's and more A's. And there were a lot of people who weren't doing that, who were putting in a lot more time than I was. And I was starting to think, wow, this is weird. I'd never had this feeling of like success before. And it very quickly came another step on the ladder for me. Wow. If I can learn all these things about God, if I can memorize all these things, then isn't that getting me just one more step closer to you? Am I not just climbing this ladder even closer to you? And then somewhere along climbing up that staircase, though, I don't know about you, but I encounter, wow, what am I even doing? I realize how much further I have yet to go. For example, and I don't even know, I had some trepidation about sharing this with you, but I've been in, as most people would term it, the ministry for a few years now, and maybe this will reveal a little bit of my insecurity, how hard this is for me to say. I've only baptized one person, and that was like, I've been a Christian since high school. I'm 26 right now. I've only baptized one person, and it was a rebaptism. This kid had been baptized before. Does that even count? So I was like, all right, well, and I remember it. It was in the Boise River. It was in one of my college roommates, and he was just having a hard time, and he told me he wanted me to do that. And so we went in the river, and I tried to make this whole like spiritual thing out of it, like, now, like, you are being clothed with Christ, brother. Like, this is, and I believe that, and it's true. But I kind of went over the top, like it was for me, just as much as it was for him. Like, now, just another step up, just another stair. Yes, just another rung on the ladder. I'm making my way, baby. And then my production has fallen very short since. So what do you do with that? Wow. So I actually even have a hard time calling myself a pastor. Because I think it's kind of a convoluted process, and we're not part of a denomination. There's not really this like thing, but even beneath that, doesn't that mean, in order to be a pastor, doesn't that mean that you have to like have all these credentials? Doesn't that mean you have to actually have like done something? People have come to Christ and all this stuff, and you have this resume that has numbers in it. Maybe I'm not really. And so if you're around me when I meet someone that doesn't know me, what do, Mike? Oh, I work for a church. And then I'll like skirt around it until it's like inevitable. Well, what do you mean? Like you like vacuum and stuff, or? And I'm like, no, I'm one of the pastors. Well, which you're one of what? And so it's a scene because you see, it's like, well, I haven't climbed that far yet. And so one of the ways for me that I can tell that a lot about myself is if I ask myself the question, what threatens me? And another way, if you're around me and you may encounter two different versions of me. You may encounter the really like outgoing, like outspoken me, and then you may encounter like the really awkward, quiet, like fumbling over his words me. And the difference that I can discern between the two is whenever I'm in a room or in an environment where there's someone who I feel is like superior to me, where I see like, I got nothing on this guy. This guy has got way more. You don't even need to listen to me. Just talk to him or her, Then I will just and I won't even be able to think of anything to say. Like it won't even come. I'll be like, come on, nothing. But then, and here's where it is. Around kids, I blossom. Like I can't even describe it to you. I love being around them. And I think the difference is I'm not threatened by kids because they're not trying to beat me. They're not trying to one-up me. They're not trying to make themselves better than me. They see me and they accept me. And when that happens, it just life just comes into me. I don't know if you can relate with that. But then all my adult anxiety, oh man, I wonder if he's cooler than me or not. Am I cooler than him? And so I measure myself in the room, okay, who's better than me? And I don't know how to escape that. And that's really what Rachel and Leah had. They both were afraid that they weren't good enough in different ways. They're both trying to climb this ladder. And so really, here's the thing. Here's where I want to land. Last week we talked about what is God actively doing in the story. And there was nothing in Genesis 27 doesn't say that God actively does something. A couple things are ascribed to him, but the author doesn't include, and then God did this. But in this story, it's different, okay? In chapter 29, verse 31, in the chronicle where all the kids are had, listen to this, okay? First it starts with Jacob loved, right after they get married, Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. Verse 31 of chapter 29, when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And she says, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. So what do we learn about God? One of the things I love about the Bible is I love thinking, what is this God like? Like, is he, what do I see about him? What is revealed about him in the story? And apparently he is a God that sees. It says he saw that Leah was not loved. He witnessed it. He saw it happen. And she says that the Lord has seen my misery. And then she says, the next kid, verse 33, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So he sees, and she apparently has cried out to, or she believes that God has heard what's going on. He's aware of the situation. And then in verse 30, chapter 17, it says about Leah that God listened to her and she became pregnant. God listened to her. So far, God sees, God hears, and God listens. Okay? And then something a little bit more strange. In verse 22, it says about Rachel, after all these three women have had all these kids, and after she'd been cheated out of her wedding night. You know, can you imagine that? This wedding feast happening and she's all dressed, she's all nervous, excited. Like, just imagine yourself, ladies, before the day of your wedding, how just like filled with anxiety and joy and all the feelings you felt. And then for it to happen that someone else is going to marry your fiance. Like, what kind of a blow is that? After all this, it says, then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and opened her womb. Now, does that mean he forgot about her? If he'd remembered, would he have had to forget to remember again? Or maybe, like all these attributes that we see, God sees, he listens, he hears, he remembers. There seems to be this undercurrent in the story that in the midst of everything that they're trying to throw up, all the ways that they're trying to beat each other, all the ways they're trying to climb this staircase, this ladder, God is present somehow. And somehow he makes himself known. This is what happens in Jacob's dream. He sees God at the top of the staircase. And this is what God says. The angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you. wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." When Jacob awoke from his sleep, listen to this. This is amazing. He thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! There is none other than the house. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." And then he made a pillar and he made a vow to God. Surely the Lord is in this place. But I thought God was at the top of the staircase. I thought he was way far away. I thought this God was distant and he sent these angels to do his bidding. God seems intimately interested in this family. And their dysfunction and their striving and their deceit and all that doesn't really seem to distract him from that. What if the same is true of me? What if all my insecurity and all my struggles and all of my shortcomings and all of my pain is not enough to keep God from being intimately interested in me enough that he wouldn't just stay at the top of this staircase and wait for me to eventually figure it out enough to find my way up to him? What if he, instead of expecting me to come up to him and watching me stumble back down to the bottom over and over and over again, what if he comes down out of it and he meets me at the bottom? This is the story that God invites us to in the Scriptures. Because what we see at the beginning of this family is these people, and God appears to them individually and he speaks to them. They seem to have this awareness that there is this covenantal God, which is different from anything they could ever imagine before, who has a message for them. It doesn't necessarily say that they see him, but they can sense that he sees them. That he's aware. That somehow there's this mystical presence with them. But what we see through the Scriptures is after the Israelites get rescued out of Egypt and they go into the desert, God says that his presence is contained in this pillar of smoke and this pillar of fire that is going to guide them, that stretches up to the skies, that is in the tabernacle. The tabernacle is said to contain the presence of God. And then God is not just appearing to people, but he's setting up camp on earth. He's saying, I'm now here. And then later he establishes the temple. He has Solomon build the temple. The difference between the temple and the tabernacle is the tabernacle was mobile. It could be transported. It could be packed up and taken. It was a tent, basically. A big tent, courtyard area. The temple is a fixed place. And God's presence is supposed to be in the middle. There's a room. I'm not as familiar with the temple, but the tabernacle, there's the holy place. And then there's a room within that, the most holy place. The Holy of Holies. And only the high priest could go through the curtain to get into the Holy of Holies once a year to provide a sacrifice. But God, what he's doing, he speaks to this family, and then he sets up this camp on earth, and then he makes a permanent temple dwelling for himself, and then he's not just satisfied with that, but that he comes down himself. He comes out of heaven himself to earth. And while we're all trying to clamber our way up and get above everyone else so that we can be the ones that God sees, Jesus is in the midst of all this, walking amongst us and speaking life, and he starts talking about this kingdom. And then he dies and he resurrects. And then he promises the Spirit. And the Spirit comes, and the Spirit is said to live inside of men. Like our bodies now become this temple. So it moves from this tabernacle, this pillar, to this temple, to this person of Jesus, to this Holy Spirit who, it's like Jesus brings God out of the sky and puts him inside of us in the Holy Spirit. And so now the temple is no longer a place. It no longer has anything to do with geography. It has to do with God being in me. And then the climactic scene at the very end of the scriptures, it happens this way. Revelation chapter 21. This is the very end of time, as far as we can tell, what we believe. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Now the dwelling is not in a tabernacle, it's not in a temple, it's the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying, for the old order of things has passed away." He who is seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." What if all the while I'm trying to get up to God, he is sitting at the bottom of the stairs waiting for me? And every time I stumble back down to the bottom again, that's where I meet him. What if right now, with whatever you're going through, God is with you? What if God's presence can't even be contained by heaven? And what if nothing about, maybe there's a person, a child, a sibling, a spouse, a boss. What if that person or the situation never changed? Would that mean that God isn't with you? Would that mean that God doesn't love you? What if God is with you and he's for you right now? I love when the Israelites are being rescued from the Red Sea, and Moses said, the Egyptians are being, God's made this basically this big cloud that they can't pass through, and they're freaking out. There's an army behind them, and there's an ocean in front of them. There's a sea in front of them, and he says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need to only be still." What if God is fighting for you right now? What if he hasn't forgotten about you? What if he's at the bottom? What if he is with you, as the psalmist says, through the valley of the shadow of death? What if there is no deeper truth to this life than that God, the God of all creation, fills every moment and every day? And when I wake up, I have another opportunity to trust that surely the Lord is in this place, even when I was not aware of it. Let's pray this morning. God, so often my sight, my